What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Tim Tszyu versus Brian Mendoza, and this is going to be a 12-rounder for the WBO Super Welterweight World Championship, and this fight is going to be Saturday, October 14th, from the Gold Coast Convention Center in Broadbeach, Australia, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on Showtime in the United States. And to get into both fighters' resumes, Tim Tszyu holds a professional record of 23 fights, 23 victories, with 17 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently ranked number 3 by BoxRec in the super welterweight division, and is definitely one of the best in the world at that weight. He is currently my number 2 ranked fighter, and he's also the current, he was the WBO Interim World Champion, won that title, but then got elevated to WBO World Champion. I'm not really too sure if they exactly put him in as the world champion now, but they did say that, obviously, or the WBO did say that in his next fight, it will be for the WBO world title as opposed to that interim title. And Tim Tszyu is also the son of well-known former undisputed world champion Kostya Tszyu as well. And Tim Tszyu also has a brother who fights as well. And just to list Tim Tszyu's resume and some of his best wins, he has a TKO win in 8 over former welterweight champ Jeff Horn. He has a TKO win in 5 rounds over Dennis Hogan, who's a real tough contender. He also does have a TKO win over current world-ranked super lightweight contender Stevie Spark. He also has a unanimous decision victory, a dominant one over former title challenger Takeshi Inoue. He has a unanimous decision victory over veteran super welterweight contender and very solid fighter Terrell Gausha. He also does have a TKO win in 9 rounds, winning that WBO interim title over Tony Harrison, and Harrison was a former WBC world champ. And he also does have a KO win in 1 in his last fight over Carlos Ocampo, and that was an interim title defense. But again, his opponent's resume, Brian Mendoza, fighting out of the United States, has a record of 24 fights with 22 victories, 2 defeats with 16 wins coming by way of knockout. So both these guys have pretty high KO ratios to their wins. Tszyu with 17 KOs in 23, and Mendoza with 16 in 22. So currently on BoxRec, Mendoza is ranked number 4 in the world, so close on BoxRec. Number 3 is Tszyu, number 4 is Mendoza. And Mendoza is also a current interim champion, holding that WBC Interim Super Welterweight World title, and I'll talk about how he won that belt. But to list Mendoza's defeats, these happened, or his first defeat happened in 2019, I believe so. Second defeat, I think, happened in September of 2021, I believe it was. But yeah, Mendoza lost by split decision in 8 rounds over Larry Gomez, and he also has a unanimous decision defeat, a clear one, to Jesus Ramos. But to list some of his best victories, Brian Mendoza has a somewhat controversial unanimous decision win over Thomas LaManna. Many people thought LaManna should have won that one. And then in Mendoza's last 2 fights, he really turned it up and got the 2 best victories of his career thus far. He knocked out former unified champion Jason Rosario in 5 rounds. And then after that Rosario win, he got an opportunity at Sebastian Fundora's WBC interim title. And he was down in that fight against Fundora, either 60-54 or 59-55. And then Mendoza landed a huge hook, wobbling Fundora, then jumping on him with 2 more shots, putting Fundora out. And it was a beautiful knockout, one of the best knockouts of this year, in my opinion. And yeah, he got that KO win in 7. And I thought he was going to have to rematch Fundora because of how much of an upset it was and how Fundora was dominating. And Fundora was clearly the better fighter in that one. But boxing's boxing, and Mendoza caught him with a huge shot and knocked him out. And now he's getting this huge opportunity to face Tim Tszyu for a world title. So in my opinion, this is a very, very good super welterweight clash. I think this was definitely the next fight to be made. Both these guys, Tszyu and Mendoza, have been fighting on these Showtime cards, and I believe both are. I'm not necessarily too sure if Tim Tszyu's with PBC, but he's been fighting on these PBC cards. I know Mendoza is with PBC, but this is a very, very exciting fight in my opinion. Like I said before, both these guys have power. It's for a world title. We're going to have another champion at super welterweight. After it was Jermell Charlo as the undisputed champion for a little bit. And yeah, Jermell Charlo just fought Canelo Alvarez, got that WBO title stripped from him, and now it's Tim Tszyu. If he's able to win this fight, gonna be that world champion at that weight. And if Brian Mendoza gets this victory, it would be such a career resurgence for him. And when it comes to who I see winning this fight, I'm just going to say it first, and then I'm going to break down how I see this guy winning. I think it's going to be Tim Tszyu. So, I mean, first let me just talk about how I think that Mendoza could win this fight, and that's really on a puncher's chance. I think Tim Tszyu is the better fighter overall by far. Tim Tszyu, I believe, is much, much more technically gifted, much, much more skilled than Mendoza, and I think that he'll be able to just land the better shots and pick the better shots throughout. But if Mendoza is able to land a big hook or an uppercut like he's known for, he could be able to knock out Tszyu. Tszyu got dropped in his fight against Terrell Gausha, and Gausha's not really known as the best counter or the best power puncher, and Tszyu got popped with a beautiful shot and dropped. But I mean, Tim Tszyu, who knows if he's gonna get hit with a huge shot, he could get knocked out, and that's really Brian Mendoza's only chance of winning this fight, in my opinion. I think that Tim Tszyu has a lot of attributes over him, or almost every attribute over him besides power. And I think that, like I said before, Mendoza's only chance of winning this one is landing some heavy leather and knocking Tszyu out. But when it comes to how and why I see Tim Tszyu winning this one, like I said before, Tim Tszyu is just a much more polished, much more better fighter. And when it comes to how I see this fight going round by round, I think the earlier rounds, Tim Tszyu, I think, will get off to a solid start. I think that Mendoza will be trying to come forward throughout this one. I think Tszyu will meet him at the center of the ring a bit, but also fight very smart and technical. He might back up, throw some combinations, and just put on the better work. But I think this fight will be pretty exciting throughout. Both these guys, like I said before, have good power and put on pretty exciting fights. And yeah, for Tim Tszyu, I think he's going to take this one smart. I don't necessarily think he's going to try and drag this one into a dogfight or anything. Like I said before, early he could fight at the center of the ring a bit with Mendoza and trade with him. But I think throughout, Tim Tszyu will just be landing the better shots. And then I think after like the first 4 rounds in this one, Tszyu, I think, will primarily have the better work. And I think he'll probably be up like 39-37 on the judges' scorecard, something like that. And then as the rounds go on, going into somewhere of the middle rounds, as the earlier rounds end, going into the second half, like rounds 4, 5, and 6, I think Tim Tszyu will have a bit of the better work. Mendoza might be able to eke a round out here and there, maybe by being a bit more active, but I don't necessarily think Mendoza will be picking the better shots than Tszyu. Tszyu is a much more technical fighter than Mendoza, and I think that despite Mendoza's massive improvements over these years, I think that Tszyu is just simply the better fighter. And I think that once we get to the halfway point of this fight, Tszyu will most likely be up 59-55, maybe 58-54. And then once the second half of the fight starts, I think Tszyu will start to pick up the pace a bit more, throw some more combinations. But obviously, Brian Mendoza will still be very dangerous, like we saw against Fundora. And I think that Tszyu will still be fighting smart, still be fighting, or still be keeping the same game plan, but just throwing a bit more punches. And I think that he'll just be just having the better work than Brian Mendoza. And I think that maybe Mendoza, like I said before, could be able to eke out a round, like from round 7, 8, 9. But I just, like I said before in the earlier rounds, Tszyu will just have the better work. And I think that, like I said, he's just a better fighter overall. Despite Mendoza having more power, Tszyu is just a better, much more technically gifted fighter. And then after 8 rounds, this fight will probably be like 78-74, 79-73, somewhere around there. Most likely like a 78-74 in favor of Tszyu. And then in the later rounds, from rounds like 10 through 12, 9 through 12, something like that, I think Mendoza might be able to try and step on the gas pedal a bit and go for something. He might be able to win maybe 2 of those rounds late. Mendoza does not have a bad gas tank. He's fairly well conditioned, along with Tszyu. Tszyu's gas tank is all right as well. And I think that Brian Mendoza, like I said before, will just I will try and step on the gas pedal in those last couple of rounds. I think Tszyu in maybe rounds 9 or 10 could have a bit of the better work. Maybe 11 and 12 could go in favor of Mendoza. But I think at some point in those later rounds, Mendoza will be outworking Tszyu a bit, just trying to go for something because he knows he's down in the fight and his corner's urging him on. And I think that he might try and go for something, might try and just really pour on the pressure late, and I think he might be able to edge a few of those rounds. But in the end, I think this fight will go the distance, and I don't think it will be enough for Brian Mendoza. And I think that Tim Tszyu should be able to get a unanimous decision victory in this one. And if you made it this far in the video, comment down below. Who do you think is going to win this fight and your thoughts on my prediction? But after 12, I think the judges and the fans will most likely have this bout like 117, 111, 116, 112, something like that. Could be 118, 110 on some judges' scorecards. But I think that it will be a clear unanimous decision victory for Tim Tszyu. Maybe the judges could have it closer at 115, 113, but we are in Australia, and I think that Tim Tszyu will be a clear winner here. It'll most likely be like a 116, 112, 117, 111 type fight. But yeah, so overall, I believe that Tim Tszyu will solidify himself as the WBO Super Welterweight Champion, as I think he will defeat Brian Mendoza by unanimous decision, somewhere in between like 116, 112, 117, 111, and possibly 118, 110 on the judges' scorecards. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.